Hey Ron, welcome to a video on how government subsidies are used to intervene in markets. Here we go. Subsidies, they are grants provided by the government to firms aimed at lowering production costs and increasing output. So it's usually things that we want firms to produce more of, right? Or lower the cost of. So an example here, solar panels, right? We want more of them because it's good for the environment. It can lower people's electricity bills as well, which is all very good. So how do they work? They're like the opposite of a tax, aren't they? So instead of saying to a firm, you need to pay us for each one you make, we'll say, we'll pay you for each one you make. So it's, instead of raising their cost of production, it's going to lower their cost of production, shift the supply curve to the right. Now, just like taxes, we saw that vertical distance between the curves, that's the dollar amount of the subsidy per unit, right? That's going to be important later on. And if we look at what this does to consumer surplus, here's consumer surplus before the subsidy. We know how to do that. And then you put in the subsidy. What's going to happen to the consumer surplus? Remember, it's the difference between what consumers are willing and able to pay and what they have to pay. What they have to pay has reduced. What they're willing and able to pay should not have changed at all. There's been nothing affecting demand here. So all we do is we increase consumer surplus. Consumers are better off now. They pay a lower price. Producers, what do they think? Another example of something that receive subsidies is farming. So in a lot of places they give subsidies to cattle farmers to either keep them in business or increase their output. So that's before a subsidy. We know this well. Shift to the right. Now this one is a little bit tricky. People will get confused by it. So we're going to do plenty in class to make sure we know it. But producer surplus increases. So the important thing to know is that producers receive the consumer price. Remember, the price in the market has dropped. It used to be P equilibrium. Now it's P subsidy. So they get that price, but then they also get that vertical distance. They get that dollar amount per unit. So they get the price from the consumers plus the dollar amount per unit. So effectively, they receive P prod, right? The producer price. So they get that. So that increases their producer surplus to this area. Now, just be careful with drawing this. A lot of you will want to draw a producer surplus, the new producer surplus based off of the new supply curve. Don't do that. Just use the original supply curve. Okay, so consumer surplus, producer surplus, they're done. Let's have a look at what else happens. Where does all that money come from? Comes from the government spending. So the amount per unit, that vertical distance here, multiplied by how many now get produced. So I said how many now get produced. Of course, with a subsidy, more are going to be produced. It's in the producer's best interest to produce as much as possible and receive more of that subsidy. They're going to be making more profits. This is a more profitable situation for them. So again, common mistake is for people to just assume that the government will subsidize it and it'll be the same amount currently produced. So you just multiply the subsidy by the amount currently produced. And they forget that if the price is lower, consumers are going to buy more. So it's going to work out to be a lot of spending. So subsidies are quite expensive for a government. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. Okay, so we're increasing consumer surplus. We're increasing producer surplus. So there's a lot going on in this diagram. This diagram is kind of tricky. So let's just back it up a sec. We've got the government spending here. So that's all good. So the government spending is accounting for this extra consumer surplus, isn't it? Yeah. It's also accounting for this extra producer surplus, which is good. But there's a little bit of the government spending that doesn't increase consumer surplus and doesn't increase producer surplus. This is a deadweight loss. So this spending does not increase consumer surplus or producer surplus. This represents allocative inefficiency. We're essentially putting too many resources towards this good now. So that makes it a deadweight loss. And I like to draw that in red. So there I've got it. Colours aren't important in the exam, don't worry about that. So that is subsidies and how they work. Thank you.